Happy Sunday, everyone. Hope you're all doing great. Today is another timely musing, this one about Trump and Epstein and the laws of wickedness. I'm going to make the case for why this is an example, the epitome of the secret combinations that we read about in the Book of Mormon, as specifically how they operate. We're getting some unique insights here in real time. But first, what are we talking about? Of course, I'm doing this musing rather than one of my scheduled 3 months ahead of time ones. I'm doing this one in real time this weekend because this is breaking news. Just a handful of days ago, the Department of Justice and the FBI issued a joint memo in which they assert that there is no evidence that Jeffrey Epstein had, blackmailed anyone, or that there's a client list or anything like that. And in this memo, it reads in part, "This systematic review revealed no incriminating, quote, client list. There was also no credible evidence found that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals as part of his actions." I should note briefly that this memo, which, I've shown on the screen here, was not signed. It was leaked to Axios, a media outlet, and this was done on a weekend, which seems really weird and sketchy for the release of so significant a memo like this. Now, one might think that, okay, maybe it's fake, maybe it's whatever. Well, no, the Deputy Attorney General just posted, I think yesterday on X, saying, "I worked closely with the FBI Director Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, the Deputy Director, on the joint FBI and DOJ memo regarding the Epstein files. All of us signed off on the contents of the memo and the conclusions stated in the memo." So this memo, despite weirdly released and haphazardly done, perhaps, doesn't even have signatures of folks, is in fact legitimate. Okay, so why was this such a bombshell? If you've been on social media, especially X, you've seen that this has been a firestorm and a fury in the past few days, and rightly so. Probably not enough. But why, right? What's the context here? Let's go back just a few months, and let's look in particular at Trump's Attorney General, Pam Bondi, what she has been saying and telling the public about the so-called Epstein files, the Epstein list. In February, on February 21st, Bondi said that the files, the list, is on her desk. Take a look.
And one of the things that you alluded to, and this is something Donald Trump has talked about, the DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump. I'm reviewing that. I'm reviewing JFK files, MLK files. That's all in the process of being reviewed because that was done at the directive of the president from all of these agencies.
Okay, so just 5 days after that interview, she, announces the Epstein files, including flight logs and names, that they will be released the following day. And the reason for the delay, she says, is because of victim privacy. They're trying to, redact things or whatever and protect victims. So the following day, she releases phase 1. You can see a photo here where they gave it out to all these conservative influencers. It's over 200 pages of information. Most of this was already public. She hands these binders over, and in the process accuses the FBI of withholding thousands of documents. The following day, she demands that the FBI deliver all the Epstein files by 8 a.m. She orders a probe into withholding the documents. Just a couple days later, she claims that the FBI misled her, says that she now has thousands of pages under review, that the official who withheld the documents was fired. 2 weeks later, 12 days later, she says that she's received a truckload of unreleased documents. She doesn't give a timeline around the release of those documents. Fast forward about 5 or 6 weeks, she's covertly recorded by James O'Keefe's group saying that the FBI is reviewing tens of thousands of Epstein videos with children. So she's telling that in private to someone, and that audio leaks. Then just about a week after that, May 7th, she publicly states that the FBI is reviewing tens of thousands of videos. She denies that the files are missing. She's still citing victim protection. And now about 2 months after that, from May 7th now to July 6th, this statement comes out, joint memo between the DOJ and the FBI saying, we don't know about a list. We don't know about any other people. We don't have, access to any of this information. I loved this post from the Babylon Bee. Bondi explained she was going to release the Epstein files, but then some pedophiles asked her not to. Which gets at the heart of what we're going to be talking about today. Now, the screen grab in that little Babylon Bee post came from a video just a few days ago in the White House when a reporter asks Pam Bondi about the Epstein stuff, because again, the memo had just come out. They released this video of ostensibly showing Epstein's, cell, and oh, look, it's fine. No one goes in there to try and kill him. But weirdly, a minute of that video is missing. And so Pam Bondi tries to rise to the defense of how they've released this and what they've released. And here's what took place in the White House just a few days ago.
Seeing Jeffrey Epstein, it left some lingering mysteries. One of the biggest ones is whether he ever worked for a American or foreign intelligence agency. The former labor secretary, who was Miami U.S. Attorney Alex Costa, allegedly said that he did work for an intelligence agency. So could you resolve whether or not he did? And also, could you say why there was a minute missing from the jailhouse tape on the night?
Yeah, sure.
Pam, could I just interrupt?
Sure.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. Do you want to waste the time, and do you feel like answering?
I don't mind answering.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration, but you go ahead.
Sure. First, to back up on that, in February, I did an interview on Fox, and it's been getting a lot of attention because I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that. Also, to the tens of thousands of video, they turned out to be child porn downloaded by that disgusting Jeffrey Epstein. Child porn is what they were. Never going to be released, never going to see the light of day. To him being an agent, I have no knowledge about that. We can get back to you on that. And the minute missing from the video, we released the video showing definitively the video was not conclusive, but the evidence prior to it was showing he committed suicide. And what was on that, there was a minute that was off the counter. And what we learned from Bureau of Prisons was every night, they redo that video. It was old, from like 1999. So every night the video is reset, and every night should have the same minute missing. So we're looking for that video to release that as well, showing that a minute is missing every night. And that's it on Epstein.
Okay, and then yesterday on Truth Social, Trump posts about the Epstein issue, doubling down on what he said in the White House. This post, by the way, is the first one on Trump's own social media platform, Truth Social, that has ever been ratioed, meaning the number of comments that it has received surpasses the number of likes. And that is an indication that a lot of people are like pushing back on you and fighting. And that's happening with the MAGA movement, that Trump's own base, and rightly so, is pushing back on Trump and saying, why are you doing this? Why are you trying to suppress this and make it go away? Why are you trying to get us to stop talking about it? This post deserves to be read in full. Check it out. What's going on with my boys, and in some cases, gals? They're all going after Attorney General Pam Bondi, who's doing a fantastic job. We're on one team, MAGA, and I don't like what's happening. We have a perfect administration, the talk of the world, and selfish people are trying to hurt it all over a guy who never dies, Jeffrey Epstein. For years, it's Epstein over and over again. Why are we giving publicity to files written by Obama, crooked Hillary, Comey, Brennan, and the losers and criminals of the Biden administration who conned the world with the Russia hoax, 51, quote, intelligence agents, the laptop from hell, and more? They created the Epstein files just like they created the fake Hillary Clinton, Christopher Steele dossier that they used on me. And now my so-called friends are playing right into their hands. Why didn't these radical left lunatics release the Epstein files? If there was anything in there that could have hurt the MAGA movement, why didn't they use it? They haven't even given up on the John F. Kennedy or Martin Luther King Jr. files. No matter how much success we've had securing the border, deporting criminals, fixing the economy, energy dominance, a safer world where Iran will not have nuclear weapons, it's never enough for some people. We're about to achieve more in 6 months than any other administration has achieved in 100 years, and we have so much more to do. We're saving our country and making America great again, which will continue to be our complete priority. The left is imploding. Kash Patel and the FBI must be focused on investigating voter fraud, political corruption, Act Blue, the rigged and stolen election of 2020, and arresting thugs and criminals instead of spending month after month looking at nothing but the same old radical left-inspired documents on Jeffrey Epstein. Let Pam Bondi do her job. She's great. The 2020 election was rigged and stolen, and they tried to do the same thing in 2024. That's what she is looking into as AG and much more. 1 year ago, our country was dead. Now it's the hottest country anywhere in the world. Let's keep it that way and not waste time and energy on Jeffrey Epstein, somebody that nobody cares about. Thank you for your attention to this matter. All right. There's a lot we could say about this, but it's somewhat tangential to the underlying point that we're going to talk about. So let's just focus on a few points here. The first is that for Trump to claim that this was written by Obama and Hillary and the Biden administration, Trump himself says here, just as many in the MAGA movement have been saying, that Biden would have released the Epstein files if Trump was on them, right? And so if they created the files, wouldn't they have released them? That's the argument. If these files exist, then the left would have used these because the left made the documents. Well, that's ridiculous because the left is totally implicated in and guilty of colluding with Epstein for doing all this stuff. So it's like mutually assured destruction where neither side wants to release this, right? There's incentives all around to keep this stuff on the down low. So that argument doesn't really fly. Oh, if there was anything to it, then Biden and Obama and all them would have released it. Doesn't work like that. And then, for him to say, like, nobody cares about this. If people didn't care about the issue, about Epstein, about all that implicates, then posts like Trump's would not be necessary. The sheer fact that he felt to release this long post compared to many of his posts is an indication itself that he knows exactly that many people care about this issue. You can't just say, oh, nobody cares about this. Ridiculous. Untrue. And then finally, is there a time not to care about child sex trafficking and pedophile rings by the elite controlling our government and governments throughout the world? Is there not an appropriate time, or is there ever an inappropriate time to be caring about something like that? It's just kind of absurd. But what is all this Epstein stuff about? In my observation, a lot of people who have glommed on to the Epstein list idea don't necessarily have a full understanding of the deeper story about what this guy was doing. They're kind of superficial concerns about Epstein. So let's just touch briefly on what this guy was up to so that we can get context about why all the powerful people he was working with and involved with are trying to keep this all silent. And then we're going to get into the laws of wickedness by which they're all operating to keep this all suppressed and to protect one another. All right. So in March 2005, there's a woman in Palm Beach, Florida. She calls the cops saying that her 14-year-old stepdaughter had been taken to Epstein's island by an older girl. And at that island, she was allegedly paid a few $100s to strip down and to massage Epstein. So that kicked off a 13-month investigation in which the police chief accused the prosecutor of being too lenient. He called for assistance from the FBI. Interviews with 5 alleged victims and 17 witnesses under oath showed that some of the girls involved were under 18, the youngest being 14. Many of them are under 16. So the FBI, because they've been requested to get involved by the police chief, they compile reports on 40 girls who are eligible for restitution. So then there's a series of exposés in the Miami Herald by a woman named Julie Brown. She identifies 80 victims and locates about 60 of them. So there's a lot of girls who are being run through this operation. All right, so then about a year later, because these investigations take a little bit of time, we're now in July of 2006, Epstein is arrested by the Palm Beach Police Department on state felony charges of procuring a minor for prostitution and solicitation of a prostitute. He's booked at the county jail. He's later released on a $3,000 bond. the state prosecutor later convenes a county grand jury, which, by the way, is usually only done in like capital cases where they want to execute someone, like first-degree felonies. But they convene this grand jury. Evidence is presented from only 2 victims out of all the dozens and dozens of victims that have been identified and all the evidence that they've procured. They only present in this grand jury evidence from 2 victims. The grand jury returns a single charge of felony solicitation of prostitution, to which Epstein pleads guilty in August. This is again 2006. Well, around the same time, the FBI drops a 53-page indictment against Epstein. This was actually the following year in 2007. The U.S. attorney, this guy's name is Acosta, he'll come in a little bit later. So the U.S. attorney agrees to a plea deal with Epstein. Epstein's attorney is a guy named Alan Dershowitz. You'll also hear from him in just a few minutes. And so Dershowitz is representing, along with others, is representing Epstein and negotiates this plea deal with the U.S. attorney. Okay, this plea deal, among other things, grants immunity from all federal criminal charges to Epstein, along with 4 named co-conspirators and any unnamed potential co-conspirators. This is a sweetheart deal. It essentially shuts down an ongoing FBI probe into whether there were more victims and other powerful people who took part in Epstein's sex crimes and sex trafficking, right? This U.S. attorney, Acosta, later says that he offered the lenient plea deal because he was told, and this is emphatically important, the U.S. attorney publicly says that he was told that Epstein, quote, belonged to intelligence, was, quote, above his pay grade, and, quote, to leave it alone. Think of that. The U.S. attorney is being told Epstein's connected to the intelligence apparatus, the CIA, the Mossad, whatever, that Epstein is above the pay grade of the United States attorney representing the federal government and was told to stand down. And that's why we get this sweetheart plea deal that protects Epstein and his associates and potential associates from federal investigation and criminal charges. So Epstein, as part of the plea deal, pleads guilty in Florida state court to 2 felony prostitution charges. He serves 18 months in prison, or is given that sentence, rather. He's supposed to register as a sex offender and pay restitution to 36 victims that were identified by the FBI. Now, most convicted sex offenders in Florida are sent to state prison. Epstein, by contrast, is instead sent to a private wing of the county stockade, and after 3.5 months, he's allowed to leave the jail on work release for up to 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. Right? This went against, by the way, the sheriff's own policies requiring a maximum remaining sentence of 10 months and making sex offenders ineligible for the privilege. And they went against their own policies for Epstein, who ended up serving almost 13 months of, this sweetheart deal where he could just leave all day, before being released July of 2009 for a year of probation on house arrest until 2010. Now, I'm not going to get into it, but that probation and house arrest is also super lenient. And the guy is going all over the place, and he's being treated very generously by law enforcement, something that you and I would not be afforded. So that's kind of the first round of Epstein. Then we get a few years later into the second round. This is July 2019. Epstein is arrested by the FBI/NYPD Crimes Against Children Task Force at a New Jersey airport on sex trafficking charges. This is the case in which his accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, the lady who was kind of his right-hand woman, gets sucked in. She gets charged. She's now in prison for her role in doing all of this. So 2 days later, July 8th, 2019, prosecutors charge him with sex trafficking and conspiracy to traffic minors for sex. The grand jury indictment alleges that dozens of underage girls were brought into Epstein's mansions for sexual encounters. The judge was about to, in the process of deciding whether the previous plea deal and the non-prosecution agreement that went with it to protect Epstein should still stand. So that was the legal question at issue in the days following the grand jury indictment. But then on July 23rd, Epstein is found injured and semi-conscious at 1:30 in the morning on the floor of his cell. He has marks around his neck. Epstein is placed in a special housing unit. The jail tells the Justice Department that he would have a cellmate that the guard would look into the cell every 30 minutes just to constantly monitor things. Well, of course, then Epstein dies, and that evening the procedures are not followed. Epstein's cellmate on August 9th was transferred out, but no one took his place. Later in that evening, contrary to the jail's normal procedure, Epstein was not checked every 30 minutes. The 2 guards assigned to check his jail unit fell asleep, didn't check on him for several hours. The guards later falsified records relating to this incident. The 2 cameras focused on Epstein's cell malfunctioned that night. Now we get footage that, is missing a whole minute, and Pam Bondi's saying, oh, it's like that all the time. It's totally fine. Nothing to see here. By the way, I don't have this ready to throw into the video, but I've seen some hilarious AI-generated videos of taking that video, and like Hillary Clinton goes in to the door and does her deed to off Epstein. Okay, so Trump is kind of being dismissive of all this Epstein stuff, right? Make it go away, make it go away. And Bondi's like, hey, there's nothing to see here, along with the FBI, which is Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, who we're now going to get into, because it's not just Bondi who months ago was saying, I have the list, I have the files, we're going to release them. They're horrifying. There's, all this children trafficking, the powerful people. But here, as an example, is now FBI Director Kash Patel, 2 years ago, talking precisely about this list in question, which now he, in this FBI memo, is saying does not exist. Take a look.
It's the same thing with Epstein's list. It's like, what the hell are these Republicans doing?
Oh, I saw you
give out.
I saw you make news this morning about that. I got to get to that.
Yeah.
You say that the FBI has Epstein's list. They're sitting on it. That doesn't seem like something you should do. You're protecting the world's foremost predator. That seems like an evil thing to do, regardless of who may be embarrassed in the release of that list. Why is the FBI protecting the greatest pederast, the largest scale pederast in human history?
Simple, because of who's on that list. You don't think that Bill Gates is lobbying Congress night and day to prevent the disclosure of that list? And why is it that the Senate, and good for Senator Blackburn to try to get it out, but then Dick Durbin comes over the top and says, no, we're not going to release the names. I don't care about the list itself, but if release the names, right? What the hell are the House Republicans doing? They have the majority. You can't get the list? You're going to accept Dick Durbin's word, or whoever that guy is, as to who is on that list and who isn't, and that it can and can't be released? Put on your big boy pants and let us know who the pedophiles are. We have an election coming up, and we need to adjudicate this matter at the polls. God knows the FBI and DOJ aren't going to do anything.
And then here is Dan Bongino, his now deputy FBI director, who last September said the following.
Folks, the Epstein client list is a huge deal because it speaks to an enormous problem we have in this country. It is that there is a connected class of insiders that feel that they can get away with anything because they can. But the reason the Epstein client list being revealed is so important is because I want you to understand that there is a class of benighted folks who benighted themselves in a little round table who are not subjected to the same rules you are. And the reason they may have done disgusting things with young women and girls on Epstein's planes and elsewhere, it's because they felt like they could get away with it. Here's Donald Trump with Friedman yesterday on the Epstein client list. This is really important, so much so we open in the segment with it on the second segment of the show. Check this out.
But a lot of big people went to that island. But fortunately, I was not one of them.
It's just very strange for a lot of people that the list of clients that went to the island has not been made public.
Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it? Probably will be, by the way. Probably.
So if you're able to, you'll be...
Yeah, I'd certainly take a look at it. Now, Kennedy's interesting because it's so many years ago. They do that for danger, too, because, endangers certain people, et cetera, et cetera. So Kennedy is very different from the Epstein thing. But, yeah, I'd be inclined to do the Epstein. I'd have no problem with it.
Good. Folks, you're going to see a lot of names on that. The Epstein client list, I believe, based on what I've heard from sources and the story I just told you, basically, it's going to rock the political world. There's a reason they're hiding it.
So as you heard in that clip, there's Trump saying in a very milquetoast way, "Oh yeah, we might release it." He did a similar interview with Fox and Friends, on the campaign trails. "Oh yeah, I got no problem with releasing it." So along the way, he's being milquetoast. But you've got the now FBI director and deputy director saying, "We got to do this. We got to release this," which is why at the time of recording this video, it's being widely rumored that Dan Bongino tomorrow, Monday, is going to step down over the fumbling of the Epstein list and his frustration at what's happening. Because, he was very clear, right? This group of insiders who feel they can get away with anything because they can, that there's a class of benighted folks, he said, who are not subjected to the same rules that you are. He's very passionate about this, as was Kash Patel. And now that they're in power, they've been, whatever, I don't know, compromised, they've been threatened, they've been gotten to, and now they are bearing this as well for those in power. So clearly, from rumors, Dan Bongino's frustrated, and we'll see this week and in the days to come what he and Kash Patel do after this memo was released. Maybe the reason they didn't sign that memo is because they refused to, and so some functionary below them or above them in the White House stamped the FBI logo on it and released it anyways. Like there's a lot going on right now that we don't have access to knowing. So this is going to play out very interestingly in the days ahead. Now, what Bongino said, that there's this class of folks who are not subjected to the same rules you are. For the Mormons watching, which is the vast majority of you, that should set off some warning bells. That should make you think, oh, I've heard this before. So let's get into the laws of wickedness. And as we do, I loved also this Babylon Bee graphic. There is no Epstein client list, say Epstein's clients, because that's what we're up against. These are people who are frequently predominantly involved, implicated in some way, and now they are complicit in trying to make it go away. So, of course, what we're alluding to from the Book of Mormon is a prime example of what is happening right now with Epstein, what's been happening for years, and what we saw happen in scriptural history long ago. This is with Nephi, the son of Helaman. Let's read beginning in chapter 6. But behold, Satan did stir up the hearts of the more part of the Nephites, insomuch that they did unite with those bands of robbers, and did enter into their covenants and their oaths, that they would protect and preserve one another in whatsoever difficult circumstances they should be placed, that they should not suffer for their murders and their plunderings and their stealings. And it came to pass that they did have their signs, yea, their secret signs, and their secret words, and that they might distinguish a brother who had entered into the covenant, that whatsoever wickedness his brother should do, he should not be injured by his brother, nor by those who did belong to his band who had taken this covenant. And thus they might murder and plunder and steal and commit whoredoms and all manner of wickedness, contrary to the laws of their country and also the laws of their God. And whosoever of those who belong to their band should reveal unto the world of their wickedness and their abominations should be tried, not according to the laws of their country, but according to the laws of their wickedness, which had been given by Gadianton and Kishkumen. So again, the oath, the covenant, is to protect and preserve one another in whatsoever difficult circumstances they should be placed, that they should not suffer for their evil doings. It is specifically about, and has been since time immemorial, when Lucifer, got Cain to slay Abel, and then you had Lamech after him saying, I'm Master Mahan, and they're writing these records, and those records are being passed down through the generations, and all these people, Jared's daughter, and the Jaredites, and Gadianton, all these guys are following this pattern, the oath and the covenant, that they can get away with evil, right? That they can be shielded from the consequence of their actions, that they should not be injured by their brother who has taken the oath and the covenant, that they should be governed not by the laws of whatever country they're in, but by the laws of their wickedness, the pact of the oath and the covenant. The next chapter in Helaman 7 says, and seeing the people in a state of such awful wickedness, and those Gadianton robbers filling the judgment seats, having usurped the power and authority of the land, laying aside the commandments of God, and not in the least aright before him, doing no justice unto the children of men, condemning the righteous because of their righteousness, letting the guilty and the wicked go unpunished because of their money, and moreover to be held in office at the head of government to rule and do according to their wills, that they might get gain and glory of the world, and moreover, that they might the more easily commit adultery and steal and kill and do according to their wills. ladies and gentlemen, this is what we are dealing with. And this is not exclusive just to the Epstein case, but it provides such a compelling and clear example of exactly this, of awful wickedness, of Getty Anton types filling the judgment seats in our government, usurping the power and authority of the government, laying aside God's commandments, not doing justice, in fact, perpetrating injustice. That's the whole point of them gaining power, letting the guilty and the wicked go unpunished, ruling and doing according to their will so that they can easily commit all their evil doings. I mentioned earlier Alan Dershowitz, who was one of the attorneys for Jeffrey Epstein. Well, he was asked, I think this is a few months ago, about the list, about the names on the list. Here's what he said.
So let me tell you, I know for a fact documents are being suppressed. And they're being suppressed to protect individuals. I know the names of the individuals. I know why they're being suppressed. I know who's suppressing them. But I'm bound by confidentiality from a judge and cases, and I can't disclose what I know. But I hand to God, I know the names of people whose files are being suppressed in order to protect them. And that's wrong.
So it's a big club, folks, and you and I ain't in it. And that a club appears to, from everything that we know, everything that's been released in past court cases, includes the who's who, including Trump, right? And so perhaps now we better understand the motivation of Elon's post just, a few weeks ago when he had his big falling out with Trump, where Elon said, time to drop the really big bomb. Trump is in the Epstein files. That is the real reason they've not been made public. Have a nice day, Donald J. Trump. And then he follows up and says, mark this post for the future. The truth will come out. Now, this was part of a big, nasty public blow up when Elon got frustrated. But, you see the photo that I posted and all the connections that Trump has to Epstein and this Ghislaine Maxwell chick. And granted, people can take photos at events and it doesn't mean anything. Elon himself has a photo where Ghislaine Maxwell comes up kind of next to him and wants to be in a photo. So photo ops and you're at big social events doesn't necessarily imply any connection. But when you see a lot over and over and over and over again, it suggests that there's some deeper relationship there than a casual, hey, you're famous and cool, can I get a photo with you type of vibe at an event. Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. This is a very fluid, event that is unfolding in real time. Hopefully, we're going to learn more. Hopefully, the MAGA movement is not going to, cater to what Trump wants to make this all go away. Hopefully, we continue talking about this. We hold our leaders accountable. We demand to know what is really going on. Because after all, it is not Epstein that people really care about. It's the victims. The fact that underage children were being trafficked to such a large degree that the FBI found, dozens and dozens of people that others have alleged and suggested far more than that, right? We're all involved in this trafficking ring. The fact that Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison for doing exactly this, for her complicity in trafficking young girls. Not just for Epstein, but we presume, therefore, for other people as well, because of all the activities and the list of people in his black book and all the stuff, right? That this was a honeypot. This was an intelligence operation for Epstein to compromise people, to be able to secure power and gain and glory, right? So we care about the victims. That's why we talk about this issue, that there has to be justice, not the injustice that the scriptures were talking about, right? We have to hold these evil pedophiles accountable. So, here we have the FBI raiding the site of a decades-long underage sex trafficking ring, collecting copious amounts of evidence, truckloads by Pam Bondi's own admission, but the government is unable to hold anyone accountable. And coincidentally, the clients of Epstein's trafficking just happen to be all these people in power. Like, give me a break. The fact that no one is being held accountable when it's very clear how many people were flying to that island, that there are flight logs, that there is evidence, and no one is being held accountable. So we get into what's called the Streisand effect, right? Where Trump is saying, make this go, stop talking about it. There's nothing to see here. We get the DOJ memo, the FBI memo, and everyone's like, nope, there's nothing. We looked, we couldn't find anything. We've investigated ourselves and found that we did nothing wrong. right? That's the vibe you get here. So they're trying to say there's nothing to see here. And so why that is the Streisand effect, the term is named after Barbara Streisand, who in 2003, she tried to suppress an aerial photograph of her Malibu home. She sued the photographer, but before the lawsuit, the photo had only been downloaded like a handful of times. But after the lawsuit, after she's trying to fight and suppress this aerial image of her property, the image had been viewed hundreds of thousands of times, drawing way more attention to it than would have been received had she just quietly let it go. And so I thought this meme was hilarious. Trump saying, stop talking about Epstein. All of us should be saying, you know what? I'm going to start talking about Epstein even harder. The mere fact that you're trying to say there's nothing to hear, there's no fire with all this smoke, makes us pay attention that much more and makes us think that probably Trump is himself complicit in this. The idea, again, that, if Trump were in the files, Biden would have released it, just like Trump himself is asserting. But Trump, if the allegations here are true that Trump isn't involved, he knows, again, mutually assured destruction, that he can just say whatever he wants. If the left, if this was real, then Obama and Biden would have released, he knows he can get away with saying that because he knows that despite saying that, the leftists are not going to want the release of the Epstein files because all of their powerful people are complicit in it. So Trump is saying whatever he wants to say, but again, this is bipartisan, right? There's interest on all sides to keep this shut down. So let Trump say whatever he's going to say, but that doesn't mean that Trump is not complicit in this himself. And now, even if there's no list in existing evidence, like a black book, I'm Epstein and I'm compiling a list of all the people who I've, had involved in my child sex trafficking operation. Even if there's no comprehensive list, we would expect that law enforcement would go build the case and find out who was involved. Go create the list, even if there's not like a pre-written list, right? So when most people refer to the Epstein list, they're not just talking about some, again, list of names in a book. They're referring to the list of individuals and organizations, companies, entities that would have been produced if there was a thorough investigation, reviewing all of the incriminating evidence, the flight logs, the witness statements, all the videotapes, wire transfers, bank records, phone numbers, emails, text messages, computer hard drives. You get all the evidence and you compile the list of here's who was involved. That's what we mean when we say the Epstein list. The Pam Bondi video footage from February, where she says, it's on my desk, because she's asked by the Fox host, what about the list? Is the list going to be released? To which Pam Bondi says, it's on my desk. Well, the explanation since then by Trump's press secretary and all of their minions is, she was confused. She was talking about the Epstein files more broadly, which we've released in phase 1 in the booklets to all the influencers. She didn't mean to say that there exists a specific list. So they're trying to sidestep and be like, there's actually no list. It's what they say in the memo, right? There's no list that we know of. That's not what we mean. They're sidestepping the issue. When we say the Epstein list, we mean the list of names of people who were involved. Whether Epstein wrote it in one big list that may exist in evidence, which is probably not true, because if you're just, granted, if you're involved in an intelligence sting, you probably do have a compiled list of people somewhere. But that's not what we're talking about. We just mean go do your job, go investigate, go hold these people accountable, and create the list of people involved as the evidence suggests. Because of course there were others. No one is going to convince us that Epstein raped 1,000 girls himself while his elite friends who are visiting the island and flying with him on the plane or just outside, soaking up the sun during their island visits to the rape factory. That's just totally against common sense. Nobody believes that except those who are trying to get us to believe it to make the issue go away. It's absurd. Right? You cannot have a rational mind and come to the conclusion that all these people are flying to that island alongside all these girls and they're off doing just, playing pickleball on the court while Epstein is inside with all the girls. I'm sorry, nobody buys it. Which is why I think that this cover-up, the cover-up of Jeffrey Epstein's clients and conspirators, is worse than the cover-up of Biden's dementia. Look at how the MAGA movement and everyone on the right, and rightly so, was pushing back on Biden's associates and all the media for going along with this and burying the story. And only later after the election are people trying to come out and be like, oh, I never knew. I was told by the White House he was fine. And so I just thought he was having a bad day or whatever, right? Like that was a scandal, and rightly so. But this scandal eclipses that. That was just a tiny little conspiracy of Biden's handlers and the people close to him and whatever, right? This is like a society-wide, intergenerational, multinational geopolitical scandal of epic proportions, which is why it's only reasonable to assume that this is all connected to the intelligence communities. This cover-up is far worse than anything that Biden's team did. These elites, these Gettyentons, have gotten away with their evil crimes for too long. And as they continue to get away with it and get off the hook and get slapped on the wrist, it is just a constant reminder that we have a justice system, so-called, that has two tiers, right? Rules for thee and rules for me. That there are the laws of God, the laws of our, society that we're all governed by. And then there's the laws of wickedness, which these, elite pedophiles are all living by. And so Epstein's case is, if nothing else, symbolic of that two-tier justice system. It is a grade A example of what we're living with. It shows the farce that our society is. You recall earlier that I mentioned that U.S. attorney, last name Acosta, and that he made the statement that, Epstein belongs to intelligence and that he was told to back off and it was above his pay grade. That statement, that public confession from the United States attorney that Epstein belongs to intelligence is more information and honesty than we've received from our own government from that time forward on this case. That one public admission that Epstein belongs to intelligence gives us more knowledge and insight and frankness and directness and honesty than anything else the government has done since. Do I think that the Epstein list is going to be released? I doubt it. I mean, it's great that we have social media and we have all these people pushing back and a chorus of voices, but look, humans are stupid and easily distractible, and powerful people in this situation are going to come up with a false flag event or some crisis that they'll either latch onto or manufacture to divert everyone's attention. This happens again and again and again, right? Think of the day before 9/11. You get Donald Rumsfeld going up saying the Pentagon can't account for $2.1 million of funds, right? And, oh, we're so inefficient, ineffective. We just lost all these billions. We can't account for it. That was a public press release that he did. And then the day following, of course, was 9/11. And no one since has talked about what happened or where that money went. So, be prepared for some crisis in the days following to unfold, something to distract our attention and divert us away from this, because this is bubbling up quite a bit. This is like smoldering, coals, and there's a lot of heat here. But that heat can dissipate quickly if it's channeled elsewhere. And I think those in power want this issue to go away, and so they're going to manufacture or try to divert people's attention in some fashion, so that this fizzles out and becomes just a little echo on social media from a few people who just won't let it go, right? But we can't let it go if we care about justice, if we care about truth, if we care about the victims. My heavens, like, this is just appalling. And I think, again, it is a great example of what we read in the Book of Mormon. Gordon B. Hinckley had the great quote years and years ago where he says, back in the days of newspapers, he says that the Book of Mormon is more inspired and inspiring regarding our day than the morning newspaper. And he specifically talks about these corrupt leaders and these secret combinations and the lascivious living and the degraded morals and the outright corruption and everything else. And he talked about how the descriptions of today's society and the proposed remedy for all these problems is so prescient. It is precisely why we have the Book of Mormon, not only to teach and testify of Jesus Christ, which it does wonderfully, right, but also to warn us about precisely this kind of stuff. And to make sure, right, Ether 8, not if secret combinations exist among you. Moroni says when they exist among you, that you need to waken to your awful situation. So wake up, red pill your neighbors, share this video with your friends. Let's talk about this issue more. Let's not let it go away. Let's not be distracted by whatever's going to happen in the days and weeks ahead. Let's keep this issue at the forefront of our minds. Let's keep it an issue on the campaign trail. Let's demand accountability. I don't know what'll come of it. Maybe Bongino will step down. Maybe Kash Patel steps down. Maybe Pam Bondi gets fired. I don't know what's going to happen. But I do know that the Epstein situation is a excellent example of the laws of wickedness in our society. I wish that we didn't have examples like this. I wish that we didn't have groups operating like this, but we do. So we got to figure out what we're going to do about it. Tough stuff. Horrible, horrible crimes. But we have to talk about it. We have to expose it. We have to shout from the rooftops. So this podcast is one little way of doing that. I've been thinking, in fact, at church today, I was planning an idea for an upcoming book in the years ahead called Latter-day Gadiantons. You know, I've got Latter-day Liberty and I've got Latter-day Responsibility. And it's like, oh, what about Latter-day Gadiantons? Where I do a book all about this topic. And let's look at the Epstein case. Let's look at the CIA, right? Let's look at, the likes of the Council on Foreign Relations and all the, the Skull and Bones and all this stuff. So I'd be curious in the comments if that would be of interest to you. I've written about it here and there. I've got a little chapter in my upcoming book, Slow Stain, that comes out in 2 months on secret combinations. I've written about them a little bit in the past, but I haven't really gone in deep to then go wide and say, let's give all these examples and look at what's going on. So if you think a book like that would be interested, I'd love the feedback. Let me know in the comments. What are your thoughts on the Epstein stuff? Are there other issues or perspectives here that I didn't include? This is a big hot debate right now. So I'd love your insights. I'll see you in the comments and I'll see you next week.